And let's see if we can't finish this, the 28th chapter of David Copperfield, which is called Mr. Micawber's Gauntlet. David has thrown a party for the Micawbers and Tommy Traddles, and he's very worried that Tommy Traddles is going to lose his reputation by trying to help Mr. Micawber. And we pick up as the three guests have left the party. I returned to my fireside and was musing, half gravely and half laughing, on the character of Mr. Micawber and the old relations between us, when I heard a quick step ascending the stairs. I knew it, and felt my heart beat high and the blood rush to my face, for it was Steerforth's. "Why, Daisy, old boy, dumbfounded!" laughed Steerforth, shaking my hand heartily and throwing it gaily away. "Have I detected you in another feast? You sybarite? These doctors, common fellows, are the gayest men in town, I believe, and beat us sober Oxford people all to nothing." His bright glance went merrily round the room as he took the seat on the sofa opposite to me, which Mrs. Micawber had recently vacated, and stirred the fire into a blaze. "I was so surprised at first," said I, giving him welcome with all the cordiality I felt, "that I had hardly breath to greet you with, Steerforth." "Well, a slight of me is good for sore eyes, as the Scotch say," replied Steerforth. "And so is the sight of you, Daisy, in full bloom. How are you, my bacchanal?" "I am very well," said I, "and not at all bacchanalian tonight, though I confess to another party of three, all of whom I met in the street, talking loud in your praise," returned Steerforth. "Who's our friend in the tights?" I gave him the best idea I could in a few words of Mr. Micawber. He laughed heartily at my feeble portrait of that gentleman, and said he was a man to know, and he must know him. Dismissing the subject, he inquired if I could give him anything to eat. During most of the short dialogue, when he had not been speaking in a wild, vivacious manner, he had sat idly beating on the lump of coal with the poker. I observed that he did the same thing while I was getting out the remains of the pigeon pie and so forth. "Why, Daisy, here's a supper for a king!" he exclaimed, starting out of his silence with a burst, and taking his seat at the table. "I shall do it justice. For I have come from Yarmouth." "I thought you came from Oxford," I returned. "Not I," said Steerforth. "I have been seafaring, better employed." "Littimer was here today to inquire for you," I remarked. "Littimer is a greater fool than I thought him to have been inquiring for me at all," said Steerforth, jovially pouring out a glass of wine and drinking to me. "As to understanding him, you are a cleverer fellow than most of us, Daisy, if you can do that." "That's true indeed," I said, moving my chair to the table. "So, you have been at Yarmouth, Steerforth?" Interested to know all about it. "Have you been there long?" "No," he returned, "an escapade of a week or so." "And how are they all?" "Of course, little Emily is not married yet." "Not yet. Going to be, I believe, in so many weeks or months or something or other. I have not seen much of them, by the by." He laid down his knife and fork, which he had been using with great diligence, and began feeling in his pockets. "I have a letter for you." "From whom?" "Why, from your old nurse," he returned, taking some papers out of his breast pocket. "J. Steerforth, Esquire, debtor to the willing mind." "That's not it. Patience. We'll find it presently. Old what's-his-name's in a bad way, and it's about that, I believe." "Barkis, do you mean?" "Yes." Still feeling in his pockets and looking over their contents. "It's all over with poor Barkis, I am afraid. Put your hand into the breast pocket of my greatcoat on that chair yonder, and I think you'll find the letter is in there. Is it there?" "Here it is," said I. "That's right." It was from Peggotty, something less legible than usual, and brief. It informed me of her husband's hopeless state, and hinted at his being a little nearer, and heretofore and consequently more difficult to manage for his own comfort. It said nothing of her weariness, and watching and praised him highly. I tell you what, Steerforth, said I, "if your high spirits will listen to me, they are potent spirits, and will do whatever you like," he answered, moving from the table to the fireside again. "And I tell you what, Steerforth, I think I will go down and see my old nurse. It is not that I can do her any good or render her any real service, but she is so attached to me that my visit will have as much effect on her as if I could do both. She will take it so kindly that it will be a comfort and support to her." His face was thoughtful, and he sat considering a little before he answered in a low voice, "Well, go. You can do no harm." "You have just come back," said I, "and it would be in vain to ask you to go with me." "Quite," he returned. "I am for Highgate tonight. I have not seen my mother this long time, and it lies upon my conscience, for it's something to be loved, and she loves her prodigal son." "Bah, nonsense! You mean to go tomorrow, I suppose?" he said, holding me out at arm's length, with a hand on each of my shoulders. "Yes, I think so." "Well, then, don't go till next day. I wanted you to come and stay a few days with us. Here I am on purpose to bid you, and you fly off to Yarmouth. You are a nice fellow to talk of flying off, Steerforth, who are always running wild on some unknown expedition or other." He looked at me for a moment without speaking, and then rejoined, still holding me as before and giving me a shake. "Come, say the next day, and pass as much of tomorrow as you can with us. Who knows when we may meet again else? Come, say the next day. I want you to stand between Rosa Dartle and me and keep us asunder. Would you love each other too much without me?" "Yes, or hate," laughed Steerforth, "no matter which. Come, say the next day." I said the next day, and he put on his greatcoat and lighted his cigar and set off to walk home. I was undressing in my own room when Mr. Micawber's letter tumbled to the floor. Thus reminded of it, I broke the seal and read as follows. It was dated an hour and a half before dinner. "Sir, for I dare not say, my dear Copperfield, it is expedient that I should inform you that the undersigned is crushed. Some flickering efforts to spare you the premature knowledge of his calamitous position you may observe in him this day, but hope has sunk beneath the horizon, and the undersigned is crushed. The present communication is penned within the personal range, I cannot call it society, of an individual in a state closely bordering on intoxication, employed by a broker. This individual is in legal possession of the premises under a duress of rent. He involuntarily includes not only the chattels and effects of every description belonging to the undersigned as a yearly tenant of this habitation, but also those appertaining to Mr. Thomas Traddles, lodger and member of the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple. If any drop of gloom were wanting in the overflowing cup, which is now commended, in the language of an immortal writer, to the lips of the undersigned, it would be found in the fact that a friendly acceptance granted to the undersigned by the before mentioned Mr. Thomas Traddles for the sum of £23 4 shillings 9.5d is overdue and not provided for. Also in the fact that the living responsibilities clinging to the undersigned will, in the course of nature, be increased by the sum of more helpless victim, whose miserable appearance may be looked for in round numbers at the expiration of a period not exceeding 6 lunar months from the present date. After premising thus much, it would be a work of supererogation to add that dust and ashes are forever scattered on the head of Wilkins Micawber. Poor Traddles! I knew enough of Mr. Micawber by this time to foresee that he might be expected to recover that blow, but my night's rest was sorely distressed by thoughts of Traddles and of the curate's daughter, who was one of 10 down in Devonshire, and who was such a dear girl, and who would wait for Traddles, ominous praise, until she was 60, or any age could be mentioned. And that is the end of chapter 28.